to the Board of Selectmen meeting Tuesday, August 14th at 6:30. All selectmen are present, short of Mr. Kalenda and Mr. Shea. First order of business is an update from the Veterans Agent, a department update, and an All Wars Memorial update. Mr. Wilson, and I see you have Mr. Fallon with you as well. So please welcome and step forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Vanessa, can you join us up here so I can explain what,
Actually.
I can pour a chair. Okay. I don't think I could be here. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here. So I'm here for the two purposes. One, an update on the Veterans Department, and also an update on the progress that we're making on getting the names collected and getting a plan ready for the All Wars Memorial. And the two people that have been helping me are Mark Fallon. I don't know if everybody knows Mark, but he's a veteran. He was in the infantry. He is in the American Legion here and has done some work for the town. And you all know Vanessa Hale. And I'm John Wilson. So just quickly on the Veterans Office, I mean, things are going along the way they have for a number of years. The mission is still the same, for me to research and look into and make sure that all veterans from Southborough have availability to the veterans benefits that are available through the Veterans Administration and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and to help them fill out the forms that are necessary and get them turned in, and also help the veterans that do fill out the forms track what is happening to their applications. And we just coincidentally, we have one veteran right now that has applied for a benefit called Aid in Attendance. And aid in attendance is typically for older people that need assistance either at a nursing home, or if they have help at home, they track the expenses that they incur, and then we turn them in, and they get reimbursed for those expenses. And there's a lot of criteria that goes with it, but I mean, I don't need to, unless you want me to go into the criteria. But they had to have served during a period of war, and that's basically the veterans criteria. And they cannot have assets over $80,000 or an income over about $50,000 a year to qualify. But it still takes about a year to get people qualified for that particular benefit. So on the VA side, the federal side, that's one of about a half a dozen clients that I'm working with right now. And on the town-state side, we still have just the two clients that we pay each month a supplement to their pension or to their Social Security that brings them up to the state minimum. And that's the benefit that the town gets reimbursed 3/4 for. And I work with Brian Valentine to make sure we turn in the documents and that we get the money back. So, unless there are questions about the Veterans Office, I'd like to tell you about the monument, okay?
Please do.
So I started several years ago. Bonnie Fairf was in her first term as a selectman back then.
That's a long time ago.
It's been a while. And I've been trying to gather the names for the monument. And it's been a challenge because I contacted the state and they sent me some names. And I realized at the time that there were a lot of names of veterans that I knew of that were not on that list. So I knew then that I wasn't getting a pure list. So we started doing some research And Mark helped by contacting the state again, contacting the secretary, Francesco Urina of Veterans Affairs, to help us get names. And Vanessa put information on the town
On
website.
all our media outlets.
Excuse me. To try to get, try to find out who did serve and that could provide us with the documentation that they served. So when we go to the engraving, which will happen as soon as we can in September, we'll have a list that says pure as possible. And then, like with the other lists, except I don't think we ever had to add anybody to the World War I list, but over the years, people have come forward and they were able to document that they fit the criteria for having their name on the monument, and we'd add those names. The only thing being the first list was in alphabetical order, and of course, after that, unless your name begins with Z or something, it's not going to fit in, but we'd add them on. So just quickly, the criteria is basically the same as it was for the First World War, the Second World War, Korean War, and Vietnam, that you have to have entered the service as a resident of Southborough. And on our list then, because things have changed quite a bit since then, people now are in the National Guard and the reserves that get activated while they're living in Southborough. And as long as they serve the minimum of 90 days, they qualify as a veteran, and therefore their names would also go on the monument. And that's pretty much the criteria. So it's going to cost about between $5,200 and $5,500. I have funding in my veterans budget that can, fortunately this year, that can pay for that. And we're ready to start in September and have it done by Veterans Day this year. Have an official unveiling on Veterans Day.
But we are still collecting names through
Right.
August 31st. So if anybody's watching tonight that you want to verify if your name is on the list or you're not sure, we're hoping to sort of close out the list by August 31st so that John and Mark can work with the engravers.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you work with the state to get?
No, just that the state was very helpful. I had met Secretary Areno at a different event, and we've become kind of, I wouldn't say friends, but contacts. And as soon as I reached out to him, within an hour, we had a call from the state agency and the person who's directly in charge of the records. He took John's list, checked it, added some more names, and we've been using that as the basis going forward.
So we have 78 names now, and that is people that fit that criteria that are from Southborough in the service since August 2nd, 1990, which was the day when George Bush said we're going over to Iraq and Kuwait and do the best we can. Of course, we're still there. It's 16 years later. So that's maybe as much as I can talk about on the details. I guess we can answer questions if you.
I think that was fair. I think that's great. It's long overdue. The recognition should be given to all the veterans. Thank you, John. And thank you, Mr. Brown.
Absolutely, gentlemen, thank you for your service, first and foremost. And thank you for all that you continue to do to make sure that our veterans have a voice and our veterans are taken care of. And Vanessa as well, thank you very much for the help that you've been able to give. I think it's wonderful, and then to know that 78 additional names are going on. The only question I may have, John, is since the engraving was initially done, had any other names come forward from Korea or Vietnam?
Nobody from the First World War. We added 2 people from the Second World War, that I put on since I've been here. Both were Southborough people. I don't know how they happened to have gotten left off in the beginning, but we added them on. Nobody from Korea, and about 8 names from Vietnam. Even my name was one of them. I lived here when it got put on before I took this job. But I lived here when I went in the service, but my parents had moved away, and I mean, they just didn't think of it, and I wasn't contacted or anything, so that got added on. A fellow that lived on the corner down here where Fred Williams lives now, he lived here, he went in the Air Force. I don't know why he wasn't put on. Anyway, there were about 8
Wonderful.
since then. But
Well, it's nice to know that it's never too late to get on the wall and be honored. And again, thank you so much for all you do, continue to do, both of you, and to be able to honor those so worthy of our
well, it's
time's
hard
work.
to be able to get it together and do it. We've got a good infantryman here.
Again, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have interviews for vacant board and committee positions. Elizabeth Kesselman. Hi, welcome, I hope I said your name right.
I'm Liz.
Okay, great.
I think.
Yep, just have a seat, have a seat.
Thanks for this.
First, I just wanted to, so just so I can say that you're interviewing for the Taxation Aid Committee, term 6/30/19.
Yeah.
And just for anybody that's watching that doesn't know maybe what the Taxation Aid Fund does, I actually went and looked because I didn't know. So just for anyone's reference, the Taxation Aid Fund Committee administers the Taxation Aid Fund to assist elderly and disabled town members to help alleviate the property tax burden on certain elderly and disabled citizens who are living on fixed incomes to defray the costs of their property taxes. The funds consist totally of donations. They are distributed in accordance with established policies. The committee consists of the town treasurer and 2 residents appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So, that being said, thank you very much for stepping forward on this. Very, very impressed with your qualifications
Oh,
and
thanks.
wanting to do this,
Yeah,
and to see that, you know, you do have an interest in helping the elderly as well, and you have a clear track record for that. I think it's wonderful. I commend you for stepping forward, and I thank you for that. I only have one question
Yeah,
for
sure.
you. I know that the committee hasn't been so active lately.
Okay.
So as a new member coming in, do you have any thoughts or maybe plans on how to revamp this to maybe make the program better or better serve?
Well, I was gonna say, like you, I was unaware of it too. So I think that's probably a general theme. So I do think that with some engagement and some publicity that we could increase the donations. So that would be of interest to me because yeah, I mean I knew about it because there was a blog posting on my Southborough for open committees. So I mean I didn't know about it either. So yeah.
Wonderful. Again, thank you for
Yeah, thank
stepping
you.
forward. I
My
open
pleasure.
it up to the rest of the board. Comments, questions?
Nothing further, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one comment.
Sure.
When it says experience in government, you said none. I think the fact that you volunteer in town, your experience.
Oh, okay.
And extended day, I mean, that takes a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah, it was a lot of work. It was an interesting time in the program when I was on the board. At the time it was a really strong group and I learned a lot. It's hard being on a board. Yeah.
It has its peaks and valleys.
Yeah, it's so true. So
I
true.
worked there some years ago, as Mr. Wilson indicated. Also being part of the BACAP, Elder Services.
Yeah, I did that program for a while. It was awesome.
That will be a great help for the
Yeah.
senior center, so
Great
again,
program.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have
Make
a,
a motion to appoint Elizabeth Castleman to the Taxation Aid Committee.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome. Thank you
Great.
very much. You'll get a
Thanks.
letter from the town letting you know to come and get sworn in, and
Oh, okay.
thank you
Great.
again so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Our second interview is Mary Elizabeth Dombacher. I'm going to ask again, did I say that right? Dombacher. See, I should know better. I've known you for a long time from school, many years. For the Youth Commission, term 6/30/19. And again, thank you for stepping forward in reading your narrative that you gave on your form, as well as the recommendation that came from Sarah. You've been very involved for a long time. Maybe you could just take a second and kind of give us a little background on what you've done and the meetings you've attended. That would be helpful.
Well, I've been attending meetings for several years, pretty much all of them, this one, two here and there, but most of them. And, but I, as a friend, the friend of the Southborough Youth Commission, and now that there's a opening on the board, I would like to become one of the members, since I go to all the meetings anyway. And I'm unofficial treasurer of the, so I sign all the checks that are written and accept all the donations and manage the bank account.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being involved even when you weren't a member. That's still volunteering, and that's still a
Yes.
great thing.
Yes.
So I thank you very much. Any other questions, comments from the board?
More than prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you. Make a motion to appoint Mary Elizabeth Thombacher to the Youth Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome again. Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Mr. Malinowski, Public Safety Building Committee Project Update. I will say at the beginning, I really liked the newsletter that was sent with all the information. I will tell you, I found it extremely informative, and it answered most questions I had, so
Okay.
that's great.
Well,
I'll
I'm
start
gonna
with
pile
that.
on to it.
Okay, great,
So,
thanks.
I guess what I will do is, now that we're in full-fledged construction mode, we were meeting pretty regularly just for various approvals that we needed throughout the process. Now it's construction update. So one of the things that's required by our charge is a quarterly update. But you know, we're here to provide an update whenever you want it, once you get into your full fall, winter meeting schedule. Of course, we'll be before you immediately if there's an issue, but if you're seeing me quarterly, that's probably a good sign, as opposed to regularly, it's probably not. You probably don't want to see me that often. So as you all know, we had the groundbreaking May 1st. Construction activities really didn't start for about another month. So what's been happening is the project was broken into two phases. Phase one was primarily around golf and getting that clubhouse, I'll call it, out of the way of where the foundation for the new public safety building is going, and move to its permanent location. And I'll walk through kind of some of the juggling that's occurred, because I don't think any report can do justice to what kind of has been going on over, in our meetings and in the weekly construction meetings. So to kind of level set, our committee is meeting about once a month, and then we're meeting in between those regularly scheduled meetings to deal with any change orders. We haven't actually had to have an intervening meeting yet, so we're hoping to continue that trend as long as possible. In addition, there's a weekly construction meeting that is not an open meeting, and it's really the town's representatives, Mr. Purple, the fire chief, police chief, and then the general contractor, the architect, and our owner's project manager. We do send one public safety building committee member. The golf management company has been there, but really we've been trying to limit the audience really to the people doing the work, and then there's readouts from that back to myself as the chair, and then to the extent issues pop, we call meetings, et cetera. But again, thankfully, we've been able to resolve, most items in an administrative setting. Monthly, what is happening is you're seeing the reports. So now we're up to month number 2 in terms of the reporting. You'll continue to receive those every month. I'm also sending them to the chair of the advisory committee, and I know that they're being then distributed to the advisory committee. It's sent to the blog. It's sent to Southborough, with the local, and then in the Metro West, and then it's also published on the town website. So we're trying to do our job of kind of transparency, if anyone has questions, etc. I know there's been some printed copies left in the library and senior center once it's published as well. In addition, we are publishing on the town website pretty much as part of our agenda packet every expense that, every check that the town's cutting for the project. So at the end of this, if someone really wanted to see how the money was spent, there's a clear trail of what vendor received it on what date and what general bucket it fell to within the budget. And of course, there's a lot of underlying support that the town keeps under due course. So that's kind of what our committee has been up to, but here are some of the things that we've been overseeing. So as part of phase one, the clubhouse literally had to be lifted. It was lifted yesterday. It has moved about 30 feet since yesterday, and will hopefully be on its new foundation by Friday. Then over the course of roughly the next month, that will be finalized. The new permanent golf clubhouse will be up and running, will receive certificate of occupancy, and there will be a permanent parking lot, which was part of the CPC funding that was at the annual town meeting, that will be used. Now, there's a lot of juggling that had to occur to make that happen. I make it sound very easy, but you're probably like, why did they just pick the house up yesterday, right? They've been at this for a month and a half. They obviously had to clear, they had to grade, they had to put a new foundation in for the clubhouse. There's been a lot of coordination, right? So you're trying to keep a golf course open, you're trying to keep the management company happy, you're trying to obviously advance the public safety building, which is by far the largest chunk of the cost here. And you're also just trying to deal with a bunch of abutters. And by that, I mean, we're very concerned about the neighbors. I haven't personally heard anything from the neighborhood, but the school community, we've definitely had a lot of communication with. So there was a proposed plan to have golfers temporarily park at the Woodward School once school was in session. We nixed that pretty quickly and worked very closely with Superintendent Johnson, just given the age that we unfortunately live in, with safety concerns, to navigate that. So one of the things we had to do was there's actually going to be a temporary access road to get to the permanent lot that is going to use what I'll call as a sliver of choke field. This is not the same sliver that we all talked about that we needed to get access to for purposes of the permanent driveway. This is a slight sliver of the actual soccer field. So because it's choke field, we had to go to the trustees at choke field, which is Southborough School Committee Chair, St. Mark's Headmaster, Fay Headmaster. They all unanimously approved it. Mr. Purple then went to recreation, given that they could potentially have recreation. There was a lot of back and forth, but my understanding is that we've satisfied any concerns about recreational use. And then we went to conservation and we went to planning to make sure that it didn't change any of their, obviously, orders of conditions with the project. Everyone has signed off, but the reason I highlight that in something that's temporary and not permanent is the amount of collaboration and a lot of the behind the scenes that is going on to make sure that, like, there are so many interested parties in this parcel. It's not like we're just standing up a police and fire station. Quite honestly, there are days of frustration that you're like, well, we're not really actually doing yet what the major chunk of the project is. But I think we're now almost there, that we're not dealing with that anymore. So there's been an extensive lot of collaboration. I just wanted to thank, this has taken a good chunk of Mr. Purple's day job, just the amount of collaboration and just making sure that these pieces are coming together. Part of my job, part of his job, but also it's fire chief, police chief, and there's countless examples that you kind of see in our meetings, that if you're watching any of the replays, that, fire chief getting a hold of National Parade and getting their rep out here to move some power quicker to allow, the clubhouse to move. Simple things like that have gone a long way to keep us relatively on track. So the reason I say relatively on track is there was a lot of just coordination with the golf. The golf clubhouse was supposed to be ready for occupancy tomorrow. As you can clearly tell, if it's still moving its way across the golf course, it won't be ready. The good news is the golfers are in no rush actually to get in there. They've actually expressed interest in staying in the temporary trailers for the winter, which we've kindly said thanks but no thanks. The important part is what public safety has been focused on in our committee is making sure it's not changing our end date. So phase 2. So they've already started to excavate for the foundation. There was actually footings in for the apparatus bay, and there's certain testing that's going on. So even though the clubhouse hasn't moved, they've been working around it to continue the public safety aspect. So we've gotten in writing thus far that nothing has caused a delay beyond the July 1st, 2019 date. Certificate of occupancy for the current schedule is scheduled for roughly Memorial Day. So, and then they have a month for that punch list, right? So you have a lot of departmental operations figuring out like dispatch equipment and leaving it up to the chiefs and how they're gonna operate and officially move, but we're still on pace for that. So from our committee's perspective, that's what we're looking at. We're not necessarily looking at this kind of interim date, but we're making sure is that this delay in the golf piece doesn't end up coming back, 12 months from now. So we're making sure the right things are in writing, et cetera, along the way. There's also been a lot of discussion about just power and how things are powered, and because we're able to move golf so quickly, we actually don't have power to the site to power the clubhouse. So what we were able to do is make some arrangements with the school to actually have a permanent fee to the school, both from a septic control perspective, but also a power to the school, just due to conduit that we're putting in. So there's been a lot of discussion around that too. Again, goes to a lot of the collaboration that's been going on. In terms of obstacles along the way, this whole lack of power in the septic, and then how that then fed into the septic was resolved. The septic field may or may not, the new one may or may not be used the first couple of days of school. They're still doing, but the old one is still in place. So we have the ability to kind of turn it over at any time. They're just working through exactly when they want to turn it over, but the assurances we've gotten is obviously it's not going to impact the school, and that's what we were most concerned with. In the last week, they have found ledge as they have tried to excavate. Originally, it sounded like, to me, a big deal, but I've now learned that any email I get is caveated 5 ways and Sunday with different disclaimers, etc. And I get everyone's trying to protect their financial interest in the project. What I can tell you is that we have approved a small amount of monetary to cover the ledge. It will likely exceed what we've approved now, but it is not any amount of money, around a final number, but it is not, I'll call it a jaw-dropping number that anyone's going to be like coming running back saying it's a deal breaker. And my understanding as of this afternoon is they've identified all of the ledge and it has actually been removed. So they actually know, it's just a matter of now adding up how many truckloads actually went off-site, et cetera. And that's what our owner's project manager is there for. So I think we'll have this thing corralled from a financial impact in the next week, which it was comforting to me that we've kind of now bottomed out and we now have where we need to build.
So just one thing to add about the ledge piece. So if I were you, I would say, wait a minute, didn't we do a lot of test borings and determine where the ledge and everything? Most of those test borings, and one of the things we discussed at a previous construction meeting, most of those test borings were done in the area of the construction of the new building. A lot of this ledge has been found outside of that footprint in the area where we're talking about this new road taking you back into the golf parking lot area, and also I think in the area where they're talking about doing the trenching for that permanent electrical connection for septic and for the clubhouse to Woodward School. So that was, it's like, geez, how do we miss some of these with the borings? The borings were done in the area for the building when you're doing the footings and everything. We figured that was the important area. That's why the ledge, has been more than anticipated.
In addition, the water line has been pulled from the intersection of 85 and 30 down to the site. So it's ready to kind of come up the road once the general contractor, now it's in the project and the project just needs to take it. The gas line has not gone in yet, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be going in prior to school. It goes along the same path. There's obviously anyone that drove through that area and saw the one way, and especially the one night where the intersection was closed down. So that is forthcoming, but it's hopefully going to be done before school begins, and then that roadway will kind of be open per se until Main Street starts.
The good news is you'll see the road cut in the northbound lane for Corderville. You'll see a thin cut. Gas did connect into the main, and it's already coming down Corderville. They're off of Main Street, and so it's probably going to be another week, maybe 2 weeks worth of work, for the gas company to actually do that. So they should be past where they need to be, and that's to not impact school.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that? And I don't know if you know the answer to this. Once the gas is in, is the road going to stay in the condition it's in now, or are we what is the plan for that? I've been asked that question, so.
So I believe that Main Street is part of that project, and I'm looking to the back of the room just to see a head shake, Main Street is going to be doing curb to curb paving down,
Okay.
not as far to the senior center, down past the entrance to Woodward.
To Woodward, and then we'll take it that last piece.
Okay, so then the town is gonna be responsible for the remainder of it, for finishing that up. So it is gonna be like that through the winter, and depending on the phasing of the Main Street project, it could be a couple of winters, that it would be like that. Because I don't think that we would wait for the Main Street project to do their piece before the town would then do their piece.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of budgets, we have looked at a lot of change orders, and one of the things that happens from a change order perspective is it has to be vetted by the architect and the owner's project manager before it's even brought to our committee. So if one of those two parties rejects it, it never actually comes to us for consideration. So once it comes to us, one of the things that became very apparent to me very early on with some of the change orders was there was a really, I'll call it, gray area of whether it was related to the golf clubhouse or whether it was related to the public safety building. So one of the things I asked Mr. Purple to do before anything came before us on our agenda was to each change order that was being presented to have bond counsel's opinion of which bucket it can come out of. Because I obviously did not feel comfortable from public safety building committee bringing anything forward to our committee that doesn't fall under the special town meeting Article 1 authorization. So if you kind of go through our last meeting, you'll see like every line item Mark or Brian kind of said, this is where bond counsel said it goes, and then we acted within, the public safety, and then obviously golf is handled completely separate from our committee. The nice thing is we've had some positives, mainly related to kind of getting these permanent connections up, but there was also almost $40,000 savings to offset those positives due to just the brick that ended up being selected by the mason and stuff like that. So we're really still where we were when we had the original bid. I think the one thing that our committee is very focused on is on our budget, if you really were to study it, we took about, remember the 4 million, the magical 4 million I've talked about? We've broken that into two components. 1.9 million we've attributed to bid savings. We don't believe we can touch that. We don't believe we have any, right? That is the minimum that we plan to turn back in. The additional 2.1, that was part of the budget that was presented to the town meeting, and there was obviously a lot of conversation about contingency funds, right? So we view if we need to access that, we will access it to get this thing done and get everyone moved in on time and build the building the right way. So right now we've only used about 10,000 of 2.1. We were very hopeful that once the steel is up, and I'll talk a little bit about the steel in a second because it's important. Once the steel is up, hopefully this change order process is going to be, shut down, so to say, and it's going to be just some minor interior edits like they forgot an electrical plug in this room. Hopefully we're dealing with stuff like that, not we hit ledge, one of the stories we've been getting at our meetings with our project manager is Westford. They actually ended up they're building a new fire and dispatch center. They spent an extra 3 months hammering away at rock, which completely derailed their project timeline. I didn't even ask about the budget. So those are the things we're dealing with. So I think from a budgetary perspective, all is good. We know we need to let you know if that messaging doesn't change. But that's how we're thinking about our budget.
I have a question about the budget.
Yeah.
Are you managing both buckets for warrant articles for the golf course and the public safety, or?
We are, so
You're.
it's a good question. My view is we manage 2017 special town meeting, Article 1, 22.6 million. That's it. What I will say is we get one requisition from our general contractor that falls into 3 different warrant articles. That special town meeting article, the CPC article for the roadway and the retaining wall, and then the golf clubhouse. So Mr. Purple has been dealing with the golf clubhouse articles, and then I have been coordinating with Mr. Gillespie and CPC, and we've come up with a process there, because ultimately our committee can only approve the public safety, but I need to give the town accountant one bill, and our general contractor expects one bill. So again, it goes to the whole collaboration. We actually have a nice process in place with CPC so that they understand our timing, because these bills are not small, and they need to be paid by a certain period.
So building committee approves expenditures out of Article 1. CPC approves expenditures out of Article 29, which was in addition to the retaining
Right.
wall, the golf road, the parking lot, it was the restoration of the course. And then we have Article 15, which is the $250,000 for the clubhouse, which are the ones that I'm approving. Now Heidi Krieger, the town accountant, is doing the yeoman's work, as Jason said, making sure that the contractor, everything gets pulled from those buckets and put into one check.
Right.
And keeping
I mean,
it all
I did
straight.
watch the tape of your last meeting, that's why I asked the question. But the bills are all coming in on time, so there's no one sitting on a bill that they're gonna have to catch up with and they're gonna find out of the warrant articles anywhere that the sum might not be there.
No, I mean, the
Every
general
14
contractor
days?
has to, yeah, they want those
Okay.
checks. And we've actually been asking for bills
Okay,
in
that's
some
fine.
instances, just because it's hard to review a bill when it's 2 months old in
Right.
terms of work, and ask the right questions and do the due diligence that you expect from us.
Thank you.
All right, so then, quick update, solar canopies, we talked a lot about those. There's an RFP going out in the coming days. It's been vetted by town council, our owner's project manager. The goal is we'll have a response by September, and hopefully the response will show that we can put these things up at no cost like we think. We think that's the expectation, plus a revenue stream of some dollar amount to the town. The important thing to realize is it will require a lease of land for that small portion where the canopy is going to whoever said bidder is. So you should expect that if the bid selection is and you award something, that there will be a question at annual town meeting to authorize you as a board to authorize that lease. But we have, the way that this has been structured is we don't need to call it special or anything like that to be able to work through this in the intervening months. We can wait till, I guess, March, April, the regular town.
So that works out, and it is approved. When would they be installed?
We would leave that to the successful bidder, the owner's project manager, and the general contractor. My view is that could happen while let's just say police and fire move in July 1st, 2019. Those canopies could be installed while they're actually in the building, right? I mean, those canopies are really for severe inclement weather, especially the winter time frame. So I think we would leave it to their professional judgment, given you're gonna have multiple people working on site. But I think our goal is to get the men and women into this building first, and then if that work stream falls in before they're in, great. If it doesn't, I'm not overly concerned if we're
It should be able to be done before the winter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's a
It's-
late spring next year, early summer type of discussion. I think most of the site work will be pretty complete
Okay.
before they do that.
Yeah.
And if the solar park doesn't work out, then what?
Then we will go back to the general contractor and ask them for a change order. And it'll be some number close to, probably a little higher than what they originally bid. But we feel like that obviously falls well within our 2.1 contingency. But
Okay.
we obviously didn't want to commit the town to something before when we knew that these options are out there. And
Great.
we think there's going to be a good response. So we're a little bullish on it right now. Hopefully I'm reporting the same next month. A few other very quick things. We've also secured purchase orders for most of the other stuff like furniture, dispatch equipment. We're almost there on security systems. The reason I point this out, right, is we all know that there's, stuff going on down in Washington that may change how much stuff costs when it's imported. So we've kind of locked into pricing now at no cost to the town to lock in because we can't actually pay those until services are rendered. Kind of a nice little benefit here. So we feel that that's taking some risk out of our project, right? If we waited, the dispatch equipment guarantee would be a lot more, and that's about a $300,000 line item for us. There's some radios, et cetera. So feel very comfortable that we've kind of got all of our major pieces locked in, and we're not looking at some aha moment that is unforeseen at this point.
Jason, can I ask you on the new equipment and everything, is there a plan on some of the old equipment? I don't know how that typically works with like a police and or a fire, you know, the dispatch. I'm sure there's smaller towns out there somewhere in the Midwest or whatever. I mean, is this something that could potentially be resold, or is it basically just not worth the effort to do that?
I think some of the equipment is coming as a backup.
Okay,
Because I think that was part of our discussions early on, that I think we added a third dispatcher position in the dispatch center, but we only have one now, so why would you buy, right? So some of it's coming with us. Things like portable radios are actually staying. The chiefs have not requested new portable radios. That's kind of what I'll call your 10-year capital plan, right? They come before you in advisory, you know, regularly. So we're taking as much as we can, and then obviously to the extent we need to look at disposing of stuff, but this stuff gets outdated pretty quickly, even for communities that may not be as fortunate as ours.
okay, thank you.
So 2 final items. One is there will be a topping off. We're planning to probably do something pretty big, right, given what the town has authorized here. So we've instructed the general contractor that, you know, we want it to be a pretty public event. We're looking at October, but obviously we're at the mercy of how quickly the foundation gets in, the steel starts going up. So we'll coordinate on calendars at some point in time. It probably would be a weekend day unless you tell me otherwise. We'd obviously avoid the Columbus Day, Heritage Day timeframe just due to other events in town. But I've been told October, but they don't want to commit to a date yet, and I don't blame them. But we've told them we want a lot of notice. We want it to be a very public event. We'll work with the chiefs to see if there's any programming that their departments can do kind of in collaboration with it. But
Do you want to explain that
yeah.
for them, exactly, a topping off ceremony, so that
Yeah, so there will be like opportunities, for example, to sign the beam. That will actually be on the interior of the building.
they'll order a white beam and everything, that the town officials, residents can come in and sign the beam, and that they'll be placed up in the building.
That's great.
Yeah. So obviously access to the site, we're gonna also have to think about that, right? If this rain ever stops, right? It's gonna be pretty, so we're gonna have to think about logistics, right? So it may require school and Woodward and stuff like that, but that's just something that's coming. Now to one final thing, and I asked Mr. Purple to look into this, so I'll let him deal with it. I'll lay the setting. Is there was a Fox 25 news story about a week and a half ago about the town of Ashland, which obviously is our neighbor, and I replayed it 3 times because I thought I heard it wrong, but there was a statement saying that they were seeking a new public safety facility similar to ours. They had the same issues we all dealt with in terms of age of facilities, cramming apparatus in, building, you know, et cetera. But there was a statement that the state was funding 25 out of the proposed $30 million cost. So I first jumped out when I see that the $30 million cost, because it's obviously a little more than what we're paying. But there is some land acquisition issues that they're dealing with as well. But it was more the state reimbursement, given that this town only received about $100,000. So I asked Mr. Probert to look into it, because if I were a resident that wasn't so involved in the project, I would be asking kind of what's going on. So Mark had a lot of conversations, so why don't you, Mark, just kind of brief the board on what you were able to learn?
Sure, and Bonnie already knows, well, the board's already aware, and Bonnie watched your meeting, so we had a discussion about that at the meeting. And I spoke with Representative Dyke, and I also spoke with my counterpart over in Ashland. About every 5 years, the state does a capital bond bill. And they put in all sorts of capital items, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars of these items are put into this capital bond bill. The legislature approves it, and then it sits with the governor to be released based on the projects and what he feels that the state can afford. Representative Karen Spilka, who is now the new Senate President, put in $25 million item into the bond bill for Ashland's new public safety facility. And that bill was passed. Now it would be up to Ashland in their legislative delegation, to petition the governor as to why that money should be released. Now, a couple of things that Carolyn pointed out to me. First and foremost, this money isn't real right now, okay? That there is, if, from a timing perspective, this is something that could happen. This is something that maybe never would happen. There's only, from Carolyn's experience, only about 25 to 30% of the projects that ever get funded in these capital bond bills ever get funded. And I didn't ask for a percentage as to what get funded in part. That may be an option. Not to politicize this, but obviously Karen Spoke is the new Senate President. Does that change the dynamics of this discussion? But now it's up to Ashland to go into to make their case to the governor as to why this should be released over any of these other items. $25 million in a bond bill for one community is a significant ask. I know that a lot of my counterparts, have been looking at this and saying, we have public safety needs too. We need, buildings, we need this and that and everything and that. This is a big, a big ask. And, I'm not quite sure how this all plays out. From a timing perspective, this obviously wouldn't have worked for us because we had, everything all tied up in one deal and certain things had to happen at certain times. You don't have that ability, with this type of a funding strategy. I think that, again, Ashland's going to make the case. We'll see if it works. 5 years ago, when they did their last bond bill, the idea of buying the golf course was still, something we hadn't even broached. We didn't even have numbers. We didn't have anything. So there really wasn't an ability for us to ask. And the next bond bill isn't going to happen for another 5 years. The difference between, and of course, Jason's comment initially was, well, they got 25 million, we got 100,000. The $100,000 that Carolyn did for us was in an earmark inside the budget. Once the budget was passed, the legislature passed it, the governor signed it, that money was ours. Okay, the difference with the bond bill is the legislature passes it, the governor then needs to determine whether or not to release it. So the takeaways are, it's a funding opportunity that may never come to fruition. Right now it looks good for them on paper, but it's not real until somebody can convince the governor to release it. So that's really the backstory for that. I think it made Jason feel a little bit better after I had those conversations.
I just don't know how you would plan around that. We'd still be waiting.
Is there any way to, how far into the 5-year process do we know, are they?
They just did this bond bill. So you're looking at, 23, 24.
So there's no way to potentially retro maybe some of,
Well,
again,
could you
it's a
make,
question.
could you make a case in 5 years, 6 years to put something in to try and, I guess at that point, maybe you'll have a little bit of a track record as to what happens with this. Maybe we're still sitting here in 5 years and they've decided not to fund it yet. And it still languishes along with millions of dollars of other projects. So there's some time to see how that might work. In the interim, Carolyn is exploring with the Department of Public Safety any other opportunities that there may be for us to gain additional funding to help offset, the impact of this building on the taxpayers.
Fair enough, thank you.
Just one final comment before you have any other questions. We have a consent agenda item for John Wood as our ex officio member of the golf committee. So just background there, Mr. Rooney, when he was appointed by the moderator to advisory, had to resign his seat on that. So our committee voted unanimously to support that recommendation, but you are the appointing authority.
Thank you.
Any questions?
How about a comment? Thank you, and please take back to your committee how much we appreciate your due diligence and all the hard work that you've done and trying to stay within the budget. And like I said, I thought the newsletter was great. Having the change orders on there was, for me, one of the most important things on there. People ask about that all the time. So as far as transparency goes, I think that's great. I'd also like to thank Mr. Purple for, I know how much time you've put in the last month or so on this, Mark, and I thank you for it. And again, working together with everybody and getting everyone to work together so smoothly. So I thank you all, and please take that back to your committee as well, and their hard work is really appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Finish this one up, we'll find a new project.
This is a big enough one, right?
It's called family.
Thank you.
Well done, thank you.
Next up, Chairman's Report. I only have one quick thing to add. I'm sure by now most people have heard or have seen through the newspaper or the blog that we were able to present to Caroline Cassini. Mr. Schifrin was there with me as well. It was a great honor to be able to give her the Boston Cane Award and actually to have Paul Berry, who is her brother, be able to present it. So congratulations to her, and that's really all I have under the Chairman's report. Town Administrator report?
I think most of my report was building, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, moving on. Consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they would like to hold? Okay. We'll read through it for a motion, open for discussion. Number one, accept $1,000 of client donations for Southborough Youth and Family Services. Number two, accept resignation of Louise Clow and Jane Gordon from Southborough Cultural Arts Council. Number three, accept resignation of Donald Coyote from Cruddy. I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry, sir. Cruddy, thank you. From Southborough Housing Opportunity Partnership Committee. 4, update golf course committee charge to eliminate the end date of June 30th under term and organization. Number 5, reappoint David Candela to Community Preservation Committee, Recreation Commission Rep, term 6/30/21. 6, reappoint David Candela to Golf Course Conservation Restriction Committee, term 6/30/19. Number 7, reappoint William Pickett as Constable, term 6/30/19. Number 8, reappoint appoint Alexander S. Frisch to Southborough Housing Opportunity Committee, Partnership Committee, Housing Authority Rep, term 6/30/20. Number 9, appoint William J. Bolin to Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, term 6/30/19. Number 10, approve warrant for 2018 state primary. 11, approve Washington Street, Coslin Drive street lighting and maintenance agreement with EMC Corp. And number 12, appoint John Wood to Golf Course Committee, Public Safety Building Committee ex officio rep, term 6/30/19. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor for discussion?
Aye.
Aye. Any discussion? Okay. Moving on. Other matters properly before the board. Main Street Design Working Group, review and approve proposed new charge. Mr. Purple?
So at a previous meeting, we took a look at some of these charges for some of the committees that we have and addressed a couple of them. And this was one that Mr. Shea had said that he would work with Ms. Galligan, who's in the back of the room, and myself, just to take a look at this. And this is what came up with. Obviously, it does not lack in brevity. It changes the dynamics, the charge of the group. Again, this was, the original name of the committee was the Main Street Design Working Group. We've moved past the design stage and beginning to get into the construction stage of the project. And the changes that Mr. Shea had worked with us, Ms. Galligan and I, to come up with, I think reflects the construction portion and kind of moves away from the design aspect of the committee. So this was what was brought before the board for your consideration for approval.
All right.
I have one question. Was there any discussion over the number of members to reduce it to 5?
There was no discussion, I think, at this point. I think, and Karen can correct me, but I think that the people that have been involved, wanted to, remain involved. So how do you?
No, I thought you
Yeah.
had 2 vacancies, that's why I asked.
There's one vacancy. So I
That's
think,
fine.
they left that alone for now.
Thank you, Karen.
I have,
Make a motion to approve the proposed Main Street Working Group charge.
Second.
all in favor?
Fine.
Aye.
Aye. Public comment? All right, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.